Hello there, my name is Jonathan.
And I'm Pam.
And you are listening to 5 FAQs by EHN Canada. This is the show where we scour the internet for the most frequently asked questions about mental health and addiction and ask an expert for their answers to them. Today it is our honor and our distinct pleasure to introduce our very special guest, Wayne Hanna. Wayne, how the heck are you doing today?
I'm doing really good, thank you, Jonathan. And Pamela, how are you?
Doing great.
It was rude. I didn't ask how she was doing, just you. I gotta be better, eh?
He got used to seeing me. That's why.
It. It happens.
I already asked you how you were today, but I should have asked again. Why don't you tell the guests, Wayne, just a little bit about yourself?
I'm a veteran. I find it hard to talk about myself, and because they're accolades, and I was always taught that when you give yourself accolades, it's selfish or conceited, but it's really not. So I joined the military in the late 90s, and right out of high school as a childhood dream, and I spent 17 years with the Canadian Forces, deployed overseas and domestically with them more than a few times. And then in 2014, I chased my other dream of becoming a municipal firefighter, and I retired from the military a couple of years early, and I went on to work for a city just outside of Toronto for the last 10 years as a firefighter. And what else you want to know? I guess I was a stand-up comic for a whole long time while I was in the military, and I have always loved entertaining human beings and making people smile through self-deprecation and all the other things that come with it. That's it. That's
really
me.
Cool.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Podcast over. That was
Done.
fantastic. Crushed
Thank
it.
you. Oh, it's nerve-wracking.
So, like, when you were a kid, was there something that happened that like created that dream for you, or you just saw a TV show and said, I guess I want to join the army or become a firefighter? What spurred that dream for you?
It's weird because the military, I don't remember not wanting to be a soldier. And I always say to human beings, I've only ever wanted to do 3 things, and that's be a soldier, a firefighter, and a comedian. I'm also a human being that when I get it in my head, it's in my head. So the military thing, I believe, started around the age of 5. The firefighter dream started around the same time. I remember, however, I was 10 years old and I was in a judo tournament. You can probably tell that I did judo for 2 years, from 10 to 12. I was a yellow belt. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I remember going to a judo tournament in Edmonton, Alberta, and it was at the Army base. That's where they were hosting the tournament. My dad left me, not on purpose. He just was running out to buy a new car, and then he was going to come back and see me compete. I lasted about 15 minutes in this tournament and ended up in the gym, this army gym, for the next 7 hours while my dad got the deal of a lifetime. But in that 7 hours, I remember being surrounded by these, and I remember them to this day, but these guys in these maroon t-shirts that said Airborne Regiment on them. And they were just, there was something about them, their purpose, why they were there, what they were doing. You felt their energy. And it was from that moment on, I dreamt of being a soldier over and over and over. The second that I had the opportunity, I was 17 years old, I went into the recruiters and I signed up.
Did you show them your yellow belt?
No, I kept that to myself. Just the thing about it, though, is I remember when I went to the recruiters the first time, they told me no. I wasn't able to join because I was on a stimulant for ADHD because I was diagnosed in the early 90s. And I was defeated because that is all I ever wanted to do. But they said you needed to be off medication for 1 year. You could be in the Canadian Forces with ADHD. You just couldn't be medicated for it. So I went home. I quit my medication that day. And then 3 months later, I went back, told them I'd been off for a year. They didn't check, and I was signed up.
The resilience.
It's all about the resilience. Nothing is going to stop me.
I love that. Okay. Well, really, really excited to get into the 5 biggest questions about mental health stigma in the veteran community and just get your thoughts, pick your brain. It's going to be great. Pam, do you want to kick us off with the first question as our official co-host for today?
Yes. So the first question is, what is the stigma surrounding mental health for those in active duty?
I remember at a very, early point in my military career, if you spoke about mental health or your brain or anything that I would say needed vulnerability from you, it was always received with such negative welcome. And for me, my entire life was built around mental health. Like this stuff didn't start for me when I was, at the end of my career. And I'm very fortunate for that. But my house was my home, my parents, we were raised around mental health, not religion, not politics. It was mental health. So I came into the Canadian Forces going, "Hey, Sarge, let me tell you what's wrong with me today." And they did not like that. So as I would find, we would get these, these micro bursts of don't talk about it, don't emote. Your only emotion should be, job related or soldiering on or pushing through. And you just slowly start suppressing all of these things that you have grown up believing in. And that is that if I get this energy out of me, then I can replenish that energy with positive thought instead of negative thought. But as time goes on, you learn how to suck it up and you learn how to soldier on and you learn how to suppress it. And it really, it smacks you down. And now, years later, where all of these tools that I have been taught, all of these things that I need more than ever right now, when I look at my peers and my friends that I served with, their struggle is so much more challenging because they have always had that mentality and always that stigma around their mental health. And they just emote with anger, but you can tell that they're just sad and they feel unheard. So yeah, that would be my answer to question number one.
That was really, really fantastic. And I think it's interesting, and we hear it a lot on the show from even some of the clinicians guests we've had on the show, where anger is sort of that first mask over those sort of primary emotions like sadness. And it's interesting that you mentioned that from the veteran's perspective as well.
Well, you see, and I don't mean it, but you see it when, like, I was so happy when I started hearing in the mental health world around ADHD not being so much a, thing around focus, but more emotional regulation. And when I was able to kind of put that emotional regulation piece together and understand, because I went through that as well, where I wasn't sad, I was always mad. But because I'm so accountable, I would be so hard on myself because I didn't want to be angry, but I didn't know it was just how I was emoting, and I didn't know how to get out of that routine, So yeah.
And not an official question as well, just like so curious. What was it like? Like you said, you grew up in a home where mental health was really a big focus. Did you grow up learning about emotional regulation and what to do in those moments where you're just like not feeling it, and how to manage that as a kid? Was that part of growing up for you?
So I'm going to give you a little backstory to make sense of kind of what my home was like. I was born into the system. So I was born and then put up for adoption right away. And when my parents got me, they, and I realized it many years later, but they were now trying to raise a child that they couldn't understand why I was so disassociated and why I was so, like the only way I would just cry. For the first 6 months to a year of my life, the only person that could hold me was my mom. Anybody else, I just would go limp and cry. So early on, because my mom worked in the mental health world, early on, I remember it was 1990, maybe 1992-ish. The topic of therapy was an everyday topic in my house. Let's get him into therapy. Let's figure out the root. Let's find out why he's emoting the way he is, why he is struggling the way he is. And because of that forward thinking mentality that my parents had, I was able to right away get these tools at the beginning to kind of help me or guide me through what was going to be, a crazy childhood. But it was always, it didn't feel good when you were called out about your mood or your reaction to something in the moment, but it always felt good shortly after because I was explained to why I was feeling that way, instead of, don't feel that way. You're not allowed to do that. You need to be interested in this. Like neurodivergence was understood in my home. You're not going to get me to do things that I don't want to do, but it's not because I'm rebelling against you. My brain chemistry just doesn't operate like that, and when I see now in the neurodivergent community, these new diagnoses of ADHD or these re-diagnosis of things, you're now seeing neurodivergent humans understanding the power and saying no. And so when I look at that, I think of my household where if my parents asked me if I wanted to do something and I said no, they understood that. Right? Because they understood where it came from. Where I've seen other, neurodivergent households, I don't want to do that. No, you're going to do it anyways. And it just doesn't help the human thrive in my mind,
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Wayne.
You're welcome.
We'll move to an official question now.
Okay.
Is there a difference and I think your perspective here is very unique considering your time in the Army, but also as a firefighter. Do you feel that there's a difference in the stigma around mental health in the firefighter community versus the veteran community?
I think there's stigma around mental health in any kind of community that we're in other than maybe the mental health community. I just think I believe that you have such a unique human being in these settings. And when I looked at my military career and then I looked at my civilian fire career, and they were polar opposites of each other. I found the fire service was a little bit more open to it, but the generation that was so against mental health is also kind of fading off into the sunset, which is powerful. But at the same time, there are certain times where we need to suck it up and we need to compartmentalize. I don't really use those two words. I'll digress and say there are times we need to mask because our purpose is to help people thrive in their most, vulnerable situations. Where I think the mask needs to come off is when we get back to the station and we sit around that table, because when that mask stays on, it just becomes ego. And when our ego takes over, and then you take a bunch of firefighters or soldiers or whatever, you put them around a table, and it doesn't matter in male, female, whatever. Our ego comes to the surface because that's how we defend our, But I was an asshole, and I made sure that every time we sat around the table, I said something completely vulnerable. I got it off my chest, and people hated it. And then I did it again, and they hated it. Then I did it again, then they did it, and now they do it. You know what I mean? Like I think that the stigma is the stigma until it's no longer a stigma to you. I really don't care what people think about my mental health now. I'm happy being, this way, because I know when I'm not this way, how I feel, and it's much worse. Did that answer that question, or did I black out?
No, I think you are on a roll, Wayne. But I want to hone in on a couple different things you brought up, because I think that you said lots of interesting things, but two things really stuck out to me. One is this idea of modeling. And we talk about like even in like early childhood classrooms, you talk about like who's the role model. But what does it really mean to be a role model? It means to model behaviors that you want to see in yourself, in the communities around you. And I think we might refer to ourselves as that way if we like stumble into some type of leadership position, but really it's about doing the thing and showing the thing and being the thing that you want to see in that community. And I love that that image of being around the table and, as you put it, being the asshole and like being vulnerable. But it's something that when you do it over and over again, people start to try it out for themselves. It creates that space where other people can be vulnerable. So I think that's amazing that that's a part of your story. So thanks for sharing that. The other piece,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The other piece that I found really interesting was this idea of the generational gap. My partner Cassandra and I talk about this all the time, where we like, even like being 90s kids, like later millennials, we grew up with no mental health support in school. But as we started to hit university, college age, into the workforce, this is something that we become so acutely aware of. And it's sort of like part of it's the double-edged sword of social media, where like now we're more aware of it because it's around us all the time. There's people like you showing up and sharing your thoughts and your story. And it's only now that we're starting to take the time to like understand those pieces of ourselves. So part of me is like, why is it like that for us later, for the millennials? But it makes me really excited for the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas that are coming up, who are really born into a place where, because there are people like you who have had that that power to be vulnerable in those situations, all of these kids growing up are saying, yeah, like I'm feeling really anxious today and I need to adjust something so I can feel better. Rant over.
You don't have any choice, I don't think, other than to let it out at some point. So if we decide to keep it behind a mask for this ridiculously long amount of time, at some point it's coming out. We control how it comes out, and that's what I'm finding. And my biggest thing is when I would get angry, or I would never get angry at other people, I get angry at me right now. And I know this might sound, no, it's fine. Now I just get sad. I don't get angry. And I don't get angry anymore because I don't let it sit and build and ruminate. And I don't let that symptom that ADHD is wonderful in giving of rumination, like I now say, okay, I have a conversation with myself and I get it out and I get it onto the table. The reason why I am so steadfast in this around my peers when I was working, with the fire department, or when I was a leader in the military, is that, and I heard this recently from a friend of mine, in the Canadian Forces, we have a principle of leadership called lead by example. In the civilian world, we say we lead by behavior, right? Our people are going to, if you're a leader that is believed in, like you are a leader that isn't a boss, you're there to guide and mentor and help humans grow into whatever you're leading them into. If you get angry at everything, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to stop working for you or with you, or they're going to start leading like you. And if they lead like you, and you're getting angry all the time, that's going to continue, and it's not going to stop ever, because it's just going to keep going down and down and down. And then as new leaders start growing into those roles, they're going to be, well, it was all right because Hannah or Wayne, he was angry. So that must have been how you do it. So when you sit around that table, or you make sure in the firehouse that you give the humans that are in there a hug, instead of, like some high five or secret handshake, that stuff carries on. I haven't been in the fire hall for since August is when I was officially, done, kind of when my brain and my body caught up to me. And I still talk to friends of mine and they say they still hug or they still talk about it or they whatever. So they're that I've led that change, and to me, if we want to change how my industries look at mental health, and we need to change how our industries look at mental health, that's how you have to do it. You have to do it by doing. You can't do it by talking about it or putting people in these, seminars or courses. You have to really, because it's all it's all inside of you, So yeah, that's my thing. And there isn't a human. And the other thing, the last thing I'll say is there isn't a human on this planet, you two included, and you guys work in that world. You guys are going through something outside of this. Every human being is going through something, and it's really, 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 present right now. And I don't think it's completely because of social media. I think it's a big part of it is because we're just going through that universal change where we're realizing that our thoughts and feelings are important, and how we emote is important, and how we treat ourselves is fundamental. So, yeah.
That was a good last thing to say. I think for anyone listening at home, especially if you're in a leadership position or you work with people, which is most of us, I think start to take notice of the times you talk to somebody or give feedback or share ideas, and notice what that other person, how they respond. Does the way you speak or the way you give feedback put people into a place where they feel defensive, or they're not coming back to you with feedback or questions or ideas? It's a good opportunity to notice those things, take it back, reflect, and say, how can I be a role model like Wayne and ask questions in a different way, be vulnerable, create a space where we can have trust, because that's where change happens. Without that trust, it does not exist. Pam, I think this is a great segue to our official third question.
Yes. So, since you're a veteran and you have a lot of veterans around you, what resources are available to help veterans overcome mental health concerns?
When I spoke at the Invisible Wounds conference last year, I was told by some of my peers, our system is broken. The system is broken. Nobody cares about us. Veterans Affairs Canada hates us. And they just started throwing all these negative things. And I would say, I don't believe that the system is broken. I believe that there are a lot of programs and resources out there for us. Our access to them is challenging because we don't know the first way to access these programs. But when I was at my lowest I think it was in 2021, it was right after COVID. I had gone through a divorce a couple of years before. I was, a single dad. Well, I am a single dad, but a lot of it everything came at me at once. I lost my best friend to mental health. I all kinds of things happened. I wanted to take my own life. I tried to take my own life, and realized I was way too rad and way too cool. And then I channeled this hyper fixation piece that I'm so fortunate to have. And I needed to not feel like this anymore. Or if I felt like this, I needed to have a way to get out. And I found cognitive brain therapy, EMDR. I do neurofeedback. I meditate. I've done all of these. I've used psychedelics for my mental health, for introspect. I've talk therapy, all kinds of therapies, but I did not do any of them because somebody said I needed to. I did them because I hyperfixated on how I was feeling, and I knew that I needed change. And the second I was able to, do it for me and go after it for me, they were the easiest programs to find. They were presenting themselves to me. It didn't matter if I was scrolling on TikTok, some kind of new thing would come out. So I believe that our system isn't broken. What's broken is our ability to create a narrative on how and what we need. I believe that there are human beings out there that their purpose and their passion is our brains, just like our purpose and our passion is to do things so others don't have to, and once you realize that and you turn your ego off and you stop getting angry because you hear no instead of yes right away, you take a second and you understand that there are thousands of us trying to access programs. There are thousands of us that cry every day. There are thousands of us that don't want to exist anymore, but there are also thousands of you that want to help us. And that in itself is like, you are our first responder, And I think that the veterans community is starting to see that. They're starting to see that because the Veterans Affairs Canada model when we hear about it, there's dollar signs in there. And we lose fact. Well, if we go back to the mentality, well, if I buy a new car, I won't be mad anymore. If I do this, I won't feel this anymore. It has nothing to do with the dollars. It should be when you as a veteran or a first responder go through your insurance companies or whatever it should be about the programs that you can immerse yourself in. So when you are at a place where you're thriving, you can thrive. Sorry, I ranted. Rant over.
It was a worthwhile rant.
Oh,
thank you for sharing all that.
You're welcome.
So interesting. So I guess that talks a lot about sort of systemic supports that exist. But let's take a look at non-professional social supports, your family, your friends. How can the people around first responders and veterans and armed forces and all of those communities do a better job for supporting mental health concerns of their loved one?
That's a hard thing to put on another human that doesn't know what you're going through. I look at my family and I have a lot of peers from my careers. Did not want that to rhyme, but it did. And you keep that in there. You also keep this in there because it just makes it sound so. Anyways.
It's my promise to you, Wayne.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think so. To give a personal example, I've been with my girlfriend for 3 years. She has only been with me through struggle, but yet she has had no idea, she can't put a picture to this struggle. I could tell her about what I've done and what I do and that, but she wasn't a part of that life with me. She came in after. So now you're seeing somebody and you're saying, okay, listen, I come out of the gate completely transparent. This is who I am. This is what I deal with. This is why I deal with it, and I hope that you can support me the best way you can without knowing all of the facts. If you want your family to support you, you need to be accountable. It doesn't matter that, like our feelings that we have are very human. And through my psychologist and my psychotherapist and all of the therapies that I've gone through, I have learned that all of us kind of go through this mirrored emotional roller coaster of, not feeling accepted or struggling with or trying to neurodivergent or not, and because of that, we need to be accountable and say, hey, what we're going through is real and I need your support. And I'm going to tell you when I'm low. I'm going to tell you when I need to be alone. I'm going to tell you when I need to go away. And I'm going to have no limiting beliefs around those boundaries that I need to create for myself. And then you take the other, my best friend, my battle buddy, the person that, this guy is everything to me. He's been with his wife since high school. They've been together for over 30 years. She has been through all of it with him and has her own mental health challenges. And he has his own mental health challenges, but they understand each other and they're transparent with each other, right? You can't read my mind. You're not going to ever be able to read my mind. So how can I expect you to understand or to have empathy for me when I'm going through this if I'm not telling you what I'm going through?
It sounds like it's about, on the person who's struggling side, it's about being accountable to your feelings and being open and vulnerable to share, because we don't live in a vacuum. And if you want somebody to know what's going on, you have to share what's going on. But to our partners and our loved ones, it's really about having an open ear and an open mind, and not trying to solution through problems, just being there and listening and being in that space and honoring what that person is asking for.
And also understanding that I might not want to talk to you about it. I was a firefighter for 20 years full time, and in that 20 years, I have seen atrocious things. I have seen catastrophe, and there is no part of me that wants to put that on another human being. I'm not looking for accolades. I'm not looking to be called anything because I'm doing something I've always dreamt of. So and it's hard when you don't communicate some of the things I've seen. And I remember trying to explain to my partner why I was feeling the way I was feeling when we started dating, because I still can't. I struggle with having my back to a door, And 3 years later, guess who doesn't have to struggle with that, because I got that off my chest. And now they care about that. She says, "Hey, Wayne, do you want to sit here?" If we're with a group of people, she supports me because I was transparent with her, right? Not because I told her about all the death and destruction that I've seen, but I've just said, listen, I'm super vigilant and I'm always anxious and I'm always up here and I'm always in protector mode. So I need you to do these things for me. And you also need to realize that when those things stop, you need to honor that as well. Like when you're not getting the support that you need anymore, you have to stay true to yourself, because we have worked so hard to get to a place where you can sit and have a conversation with people that if you don't have that support, it is going to just be like back in the day in the Army when your sergeant's telling you to suck it up, right? Those micro things, you're just going to suck it up and bury yourself, and you're going to be right back where you were, because we want to go back. I want to go back to these bad habits, but I refuse to, because I'm handsome and resilient. I just needed to tell you I'm handsome.
We'll keep that one in too. I agree.
Thank you.
We have 2 more questions for you, one official and one slightly less official.
Cool.
But it's kind of a new thing. Pam, do you want to share?
Yeah. So as he said, it's a brand new tradition on this show, and it's called the Pay It Forward question. So it's where a previous guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who that person will be or what their expertise or experience is. So the question is, what is your favorite song to listen to when you're feeling down, and why?
The universe is a wonderful thing. The best advice I had ever gotten was from one of my closest friends. His name is Paul O'Brien. And when I left the military, I really struggled to make friends because it's just, you don't relate to people. It's a different world. Paul took his life in 2017 due to bipolar disorder. And I remember when I was going through my divorce, I had called him bawling my eyes out. I don't even know I was bawling. I was really happy I was getting divorced. I just think that it all came to a head, And he said, Wayne, the best advice I can give you is find the most depressing songs and listen to them until you're done crying, and you will feel better. So I went upstairs and I put on some headphones and I listened to a song by Pink Floyd called Wish You Were Here. And I don't know why, but that song just gets me in every feel. And I find that when I need music, I will always start with that and go from there. But yeah, that would be my go-to. More than words. If I was sitting in the hallway with my guitar in high school and girls would walk by, I would start playing more than.
When David and Roger Waters from Pink Floyd sing, "We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl," it's like my heart.
We're all in a fishbowl. Yeah,
we are.
Yeah.
It's been, and that's one of my favorite songs too, by the way.
See how powerful this is?
Cool. It's been amazing having you on the show. If you were to give somebody one small piece of advice in starting their own journey with their mental health, what would you share with them? What's your call to action?
Go inside. It's not about advice. I don't give advice. And this is something I've said for years that I've been creating on the internet and speaking and stuff like that is I have no advice. The only thing I believe that the advice out there needs to come from you, and what needs to come from people like me is we need to resonate more. When we can see that the feelings and emotions that we are going through are human and they're normal and they're acceptable and they're wonderful, then we give ourselves the ability to give grace. And when you can give yourself grace, you have the opportunity to go introspective. And when you go introspective, you are doing nothing but feeding your soul. But listen to the advice from the professionals and resonate with the humans that you relate to, and you will be okay. Honestly.
That is great advice, though.
It's not advice.
Sorry.
I'm not, I should, again, it's only because when you are so me, I don't even take my own advice. So how can I give any advice to anybody else? So just resonate. If I could give you any advice, it's don't take advice from Wayne.
Except in this case.
Except right now.
Where you mentioned that you've been talking about this stuff on the internet for years. Where can people find you and connect with you?
You can find me. I don't do it very much right now. I do it when I feel inspired, but you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok under Good Morning Assholes. I am trying to build a podcast and a show, but we all know how that is. And that's on YouTube, and it's under the title Mindful-ish, because that's what I believe I am. And then that's it. You can show up at my house if you want, but that'll be awkward. So I would not like that. But yeah.
So your advice to them is to not show up at your house.
My advice to you is don't show up.
Basically. Wayne, thank you so much. To learn more about the work we do over here at EHN in our support with military veterans and first responders communities, please check out ehnguardians.ca. It's a new site and it's lovely. Pam actually basically spearheaded the whole thing. So check that out. And to listen to even more episodes of 5 Facts, you can check us out on streaming platforms everywhere. Wayne, Pam, thank you so much.